My name is Jeanne Allert, and I'm founder and executive director of the Samaritan Women. I'd like to take a little bit of your time, in lieu of our being able to get together face-to-face, and give you more information about our proposal for solving the shelter crisis in the United States, specifically the shelter crisis that affects victims of domestic sex trafficking. I have some updated information for you. For example, according to the Global Slavery Index for 2020, there are over 403,000 people in the United States living in modern-day slavery. Now, while that number is significant, it's also complicated by other reports that are starting to come out. For example, there was a report from the University of Texas at Austin that reported 79,000 children and youth victims of sex trafficking in that state alone. A study of that nature hasn't even been done in many other states, so we have no idea of the magnitude of the problem. But considering just the size of these numbers and the fact that housing remains the #1 cited and unmet need of trafficking victims, according to the Polaris Project, we offer this proposal. We have actively been studying the shelter landscape since 2016 to get an idea of where survivors have access to resources. And you can see from the map that we keep current on our website that there are great vacancies across the United States. You probably know that victims of trafficking are often moved from state to state as part of the trade. They really become persona non grata. And that's why part of our vision is to see that a survivor anywhere in the nation would have access to qualified care. Part of the challenge that is in front of us right now is knowing that there are 9 states that don't have a single shelter program for this type of population, and there are 6 states that have only one. In total, we've only identified 169 shelters for the entire nation. So we know you're familiar with our work as the Samaritan Women's Shelter Program located in Baltimore, and we thank you for the support that you have given us in the past. 2 years ago, our board made a very difficult decision, and we chose to create an initiative called the Institute for Shelter Care. Based on this information about the dearth of services nationally and the fact that we had received so many requests to mentor other agencies, to teach them our model, so that they could have the success that we have had, we made that really tough decision to temporarily suspend direct services so that we could focus on a multiplication model, so that we could address this problem on a much bigger scale. So the Institute for Shelter Care focuses on these 3 areas of research about this field because it's still very much an emerging field. The average shelter has only been around about 6.5 years. On education and training so that we can make sure that we are continuously learning from the work that everybody is doing and also improving the quality of care. And ultimately to move to credentialing so that we can verify what types of agencies are doing really good work. Certainly COVID has forced all of us to make changes. And so while our mission has not changed, some of our methods have, and maybe since the last time we talked. It has been an exciting 4 months for the Samaritan Women, and I'm very pleased to say that we have successfully retooled in many areas to stay true to our mission and keep our momentum, but our tactics have changed. For example, we've adjusted the way we're going to do the courseware so we can open up more points of entry for different shelters. We know we need to disseminate much of the training virtually, as much as possible, while also maintaining quality. And we need to secure a best-in-class learning platform so that we can not only realize getting this content out nationally, but an interesting new wrinkle has come to our attention over the last couple of months, and that is how much the international community has also been interested in our model and wanting our support in helping to establish shelters in their program. For example, just this week, I spent a considerable amount of time with folks in Australia who want to establish the first shelter program in their country. So we have only to imagine how far this can possibly go, but our steps today can be in making sure that we're building a strong foundation for that growth. Now here's a topic that I could go on and on and on about because I'm very proud of the content that we have spent 2 years building and putting into instructional content so that we can help to train other shelters. This is what we refer to as our bookshelf, but it is essentially the curriculum that we have developed in order to establish new shelters and to equip existing shelters. I'm going to take you through this in a little bit more detail. The first two books or blocks of content are set apart and we call them ministry foundations. For a startup organization, we have learned that the number one reason that shelters fail over the last several years is not necessarily because they run out of money. It's more because they haven't built a solid and healthy organizational structure to begin with. They may be ran with passion into the work, but they didn't put the order in place. And so we work closely with organizations like the Evangelical Council on Financial Accountability, ECFA, to make sure that these organizations are getting off on a strong footing in terms of their governance, their leadership, their policies, their structures for how they will govern. And so we focus on how they're also going to steward their primary resources, their facility, their financial resources, their fundraising, and also their staffing. Any organization that wants to go through the Institute's program that is a brand new organization would have to start with Ministry Foundations. An agency that completed Ministry Foundations would be ready to move on to the second block of content that we call Program and Services. Here's where we begin to do a deep dive into actually serving the client population, understanding the victimology of trafficking victims, going into our care model in great detail, looking at therapeutic interventions, how the staff has to coalesce around the model, how we measure the success of a patron that is going through the program. So this is over 112 hours of classroom instruction, but it's also supported by webinars, by videos, by podcasts. So this is a tremendous investment on behalf of the agencies that are going through this program. But we set it aside for Ministry Foundations so that we could create a second entry point for those organizations that currently exist who might be serving an analogous population, not yet the trafficking population, or maybe they're seeing trafficked persons and they don't yet have the competency to serve them well. What do I mean by that? That might be a homeless and runaway youth shelter. That might be a domestic violence shelter. That might be an organization that has already got some traction. So think of Helping Up Mission here in Baltimore. That's a great example. They have a tremendous and solid history as an organization, but they haven't moved into the specifics of serving this population. I'm excited to report that we've been working together for over a year to help them get ready for their women and children's shelter because they know that they're going to be serving trafficked women. So the programs and services is really getting into the service delivery side of the work. And as I mentioned, it's our aspiration to then certify agencies who've not only completed all of the training, but they have demonstrated competency. They've been willingly undergoing quarterly and annual reports. They've subjected themselves to a site visit. They've put themselves in a position of being held accountable for the work that they do so that we can then certify that they are a credible and reputable agency. This is something that's lacking in our field right now, and we look forward to offering it. We piloted this content in 2019 with a group of mentees from Virginia, Maryland, Iowa, and Pennsylvania. As you have time, I'd strongly encourage you to take about 6 minutes and listen to Kay's video where she talks about how she entered into the Institute's training program and what she's gained from that experience. We weren't able to have a cohort in 2020 because of COVID-19, but we are rapidly gearing up for a robust year in 2021. We still don't know if we're going to be able to gather, and that's why we are doing a lot to develop video-based courses, construct webinars, and move our content to an alternate platform. But our plans remain the same. We know we need to do this work. And so in 2021, we plan to do double the amount of intensives. So we will offer 2 iterations of Ministry Foundations and 2 iterations of Programs and Services, with our goal of reaching 16 agencies next year alone. We will then repeat this schedule in 2022, 23, and 24 until we can see and measure that there has been a sufficient change in the landscape such that survivors are getting to the proper services and those services are well conducted. We still have some things to do to get ready, though, for the balance of this year. We need to build up our internal technology infrastructure. We're pretty good, but we've got a ways to go to put polish on the work that we do. We need to continue migrating our courses that we had in a classroom setting into an online setting. Some will remain in classroom. It's hard to do this work if you don't have a face-to-face experience. But we're moving as much as we can so that we can be nimble and allow for the growth however the Lord leads. And we will be selecting and implementing a learning management system, so we'll be able to organize all of this content and track an agency's progress through this instruction and also their accountability, so that can create a portfolio for that agency leading to their certification. Needless to say, I'm excited about being able to do this work. What I have experienced in my own life for the last 13 years, serving these amazing and courageous women, has left an indelible mark on my spirit. And I look forward to raising up the next generation of shelter planters and operators who are going to pour into women, children, and men across this country who have not known freedom, who have not known liberty, and who have not known the love of Christ.